Welcome everyone to the River Road Santa Clara Neighborhood Plan Info session. We're going to get started here and I'm going to share my screen, but first I'll just introduce who's here with me. I'm Terry Harding. I'm a principal planner with the City of Eugene, and with me are Leah Rausch and Elena Domingo, two other city planners. And we also have CAC members, Mary and John. Would you like to say hello? Or wait. Mary Leontovich and John Belcher serve on the Community Advisory Committee for the project. So I'm going to share my screen here.
That looks good.
That look good? Great. Okay.
Harry, should we invite our guests to identify themselves?
That's not part of the format. We've got them in the attendee box, so they can't unmute. But during the Q&A, we can do that. So as I mentioned, my name's Terry Harding. I'm a principal planner and also serving as the project manager for this phase of the neighborhood plan. This information session is being recorded and will be available on the city website shortly. Our agenda is to cover where we've been with the neighborhood plan, where we are now in terms of neighborhood planning elements, community feedback opportunities, and the process for plan adoption or approval, and where we're going, followed by a moderated Q&A session. And we are a small group, so we should be able to have a discussion. Our main goal is to help people learn about what is in the draft plan documents and how to submit their feedback. Here are our Zoom and engagement agreements for this afternoon. Please use the Q&A tool or raise your virtual hand to ask a verbal question at the end of the presentation. Please use respectful language, and please keep your question or comment concise. We will help direct you on how to have your comments heard by the community organizations, the Community Advisory Committee at this point in the process. And there will be additional opportunities to give comments to the planning commissions, both Eugene and Lane County, and the elected officials, the City Council and Board of Commissioners later in the process this year. So where have we been? The neighborhood plan project is divided into 6 phases. From spring 2017 through 2018, the first 3 phases focused on reaching out, visioning, and neighborhood priorities, when we asked community members what they value in their neighborhoods now and about their hopes and visions for the future. From 2018 to 2019, the policy development phase focused on drafting policies that relate to the vision and neighborhood priorities. The draft policies are organized under 18 high-level goals. Both the goals and policies were written by the Community Advisory Committee and vetted by topic area working groups and the project management team. Summer 2019 through 2021, the action planning phase focused on drafting, evaluating, and prioritizing actions, which the community identified as possible strategies to implement the neighborhood plan policies. In May 2021, the Eugene City Council and Lane County Board of Commissioners directed staff to move into the adoption phase and prepare the River Road Santa Clara Neighborhood Plan adoption package for community review. Throughout the project, many groups have helped guide the community outreach and the creation of content. The Community Advisory Committee is an 11-person committee nominated by the River Road Community Organization and Santa Clara Community Organization and appointed by the Planning Commission. They play a key advisory role on the project and wrote the vision statements, goals, policies, and actions. River Road and Santa Clara community organizations are playing a key role communicating with neighbors, hosting and volunteering at events related to the planning process. The working groups for each topic area vetted and refined the goals, policies, and actions. The general public has been invited to participate and give feedback along the way and at each milestone, typically at a community meeting at North Eugene High School, which we'll be doing one more time next week. And lastly, the City of Eugene and Lane County are staffing the project across multiple departments, and we're coordinating with special districts and who are giving their feedback to their areas of expertise. Here are some of the events and activities the project team has undertaken over the last 5 years. There are literally thousands of hours of volunteer time represented on this slide. Thank you so much to our volunteers. Where we are now. The adoption package includes 3 main components: a neighborhood plan, an action plan, and a set of neighborhood-specific code amendments. And I'll walk through what's included in each of those. The draft neighborhood plan. So adoption of this plan will provide policy direction to guide implementation. The neighborhood plan will serve as an adopted land use plan, implementing statewide planning goals and guidelines at the local level. The plan focuses on economic development, transportation, parks and natural resources, land use, and community. Each topic area includes a vision statement, goals, and policies. The neighborhood plan will replace the current River Road Santa Clara Urban Facilities Plan, which was adopted in 1987. The action plan includes community identified actions that are possible strategies to implement the adopted policies. The action plan is not a formally adopted land use plan. Rather, it will guide implementation of the neighborhood plan incrementally over the long term and will require continued coordination between the city, county, River Road and Santa Clara communities, and other community partners, as well as advocacy for additional resources. This next series of slides illustrates an example of how a vision statement translates to an action on the ground. This is the Parks and Natural Resources topic area vision statement. It's high level, and it describes how the community would like parks and natural resources to feel and function in the future. That vision is implemented by a number of goals. Goal 8 is to provide neighborhood access to recreational opportunities, parks, and community centers. Policies underneath this goal describe in more detail ways to achieve the goal. So 8.1 is about parks within a half-mile walking distance. Number 8.2 is about connectivity between parks, natural areas, and other open spaces such as public paths. And 8.3 is about recreational opportunities and community centers, enhancing equitable access to those resources. The action plan contains 3 potential actions under that policy 8.3. One talks about the Santa Clara Schoolhouse, which is right now in active process of being coordinated to bring this action to fruition. Number 2 is about Santa Clara Community Center, which is in the master planning phase. And number 3, it talks about ongoing recreation programs for all community members, which is also in process. Here's a picture of the Santa Clara Park Master Plan. It's next to Madison Middle School. And another note about this is that this site was actually added to the urban growth boundary when it was adopted in 2017, enabling the property to be annexed to the city, master planned, and eventually built as a park. Next, the neighborhood-specific code amendments. This set of proposed land use code changes amend the C2 community commercial zone and the R1 low-density residential zone within the neighborhood boundaries to incorporate the most critical items originally included in the draft River Road Corridor Code and important to the neighborhoods. This includes building height limits, prohibiting or limiting certain auto-oriented uses, and adding transition standards between commercial and residential zones for C2 zone properties. And lastly, expanding small-scale collective farm sales opportunities in the R1 zone. The purpose of those code amendments are on the slide: to implement important policies, to promote walkable neighborhoods by adding pedestrian-friendly building design standards and to support a citywide shift to less auto-oriented land use to align with our climate and transportation goals. This next series of slides goes through some graphics. All of these graphics are available on the website and linked in the surveys. You can look at them, blow them up, or print them. This one illustrates the proposal to reduce allowable height of buildings in the C2 zone, which is along River Road and in other locations in the neighborhood. The proposal is to lower the height to a maximum of 60 feet within the two neighborhoods. In addition, within 50 feet of the R1 zone, the maximum height for a commercial building is 30 feet, the same as the maximum R1 building height. And that's shown here on the slide. Some of the transition standards include options for how a building can accomplish a transition between uses. So this option, 1A, is to provide a 10-foot setback with a 6-foot high site obscuring fence or wall, shown here in the middle of the slide. The next option is to do the same 10-foot setback, but use a 6-foot metal fence and shrubs planted every 6 feet. So that's a different way to do it. Option 1C is a 10-foot landscape buffer, meeting the high screen landscape standard. That's called L3 in our code. Then option 2 is a 15-foot setback, so a little bit bigger, with canopy trees every 25 feet and a 6-foot high fence or wall, or that same 15-foot setback plus canopy trees and a 6-foot high metal fence plus the shrubs, shown in the little inset here. All of these are also available on large-scale boards that we'll have at North Eugene High School. The last option, option 3 for transitions, is just simply to provide a larger setback of 25 feet between the building and the property line. Additional code amendments included are building design standards, including orientation, facade requirements, building wall requirements and amount of windows that need to be on that wall, and weather protection. There is a list of prohibited uses that are associated with motor vehicle, motorcycle, agricultural machinery, and heavy equipment, sales, storage, and service. So existing ones can stay, but new ones would not be allowed to be located in these neighborhoods, as well as storage facilities. There are quite a few of those already in existence, so this code amendment would not allow any new ones to be built. And lastly, the allow display and sale of agricultural products would allow collective sale of produce, so multiple growers can sell their produce together at one property. A number of challenges have affected the project over the last couple of years, including the pandemic, staff turnover, and new state mandates. In particular, the new middle housing law that was required by House Bill 2001 applies to all R1 zoned land equally, which made early visions for this project of a middle housing transition zone between River Road and the R1 areas inconsistent with the new code. There was more state legislation about climate-friendly housing, for example, compact housing located close into the city center, smaller housing options, and equitable outcomes, increasing affordability, reducing impacts on historically marginalized communities, and reducing emissions. So large statewide goals are being handed to cities across the state in order to remove barriers to housing. It's a statewide focus like never before. And it does affect things including parking, process requirements, and development standards. In response to all of these new requirements, the plan and implementation tools were updated to comply with the new laws. The visions, goals, and policies and actions remain largely intact after 5 years of community work, but some aspects needed to shift. More equitable approach to land use code amendments on this slide means that the city is responding to this recent state legislation regarding housing production by planning for all parts of the city equally, instead of writing detailed requirements that apply to one area. Our code tools are responding to an evolving state landscape that is focusing on addressing the housing crisis and moving toward more equitable outcomes. As far as what's currently underway across the city, there are projects that I've mentioned already, like Santa Clara Community Park, that are already implementing some of the things included in the neighborhood plan. Other examples include the West Bank Path Project, the Ruby Street Bridge to help pedestrians get over Beltline from Santa Clara and reach North Eugene High School. There are Greenway Code amendments and climate-friendly and equitable communities project happenings underway, and there's a lot of information about both of those projects on our city website, as well as Engage Eugene. And then there is upcoming work just getting started on citywide land inventory, updating our next round of urban growth boundary planning, and that will include a look at citywide zoning along our corridors and what incentives are required to build the compact development that we envision. Okay, I get to hand it to Leah for a moment.
Yeah, thanks, Terry. So that was a great overview, I think, of what is in the plan and what the process has looked like so far. We are in the stage where the Community Advisory Committee and the project team at large are really looking for final feedback before this moves forward into the formal adoption process, which Terry will talk a little bit more about. There's really kind of 4 main ways you can get involved at this stage, and that's focused on giving us your feedback and thoughts on the draft plan and code materials that are out for community feedback right now. That kind of comment and feedback period will be open through June 5th. You have 4 primary ways to engage. So you've already done one of them. You're here today. You're learning about the plan, what's in the plan, the code materials, the process and background, getting caught up on that. This is our second of 2 virtual information sessions like this. If this has piqued your interest and you want to learn more or discuss with your neighbors, there's an opportunity next week to come to a community meeting at North Eugene High School on May 25th, so a week from today, from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. That'll be an opportunity to engage with community members and talk through what's in the plan, how the plan can be improved, what the 2 opportunities are for implementing the kind of visions and policies within the plan itself. And then the final 2 pieces, if you want to kind of gather at a more smaller, intimate scale, you can use the meeting toolkit that we've provided to have a discussion with your family, your friends, your neighbors, your book club, whatever that might look like, and kind of organize and collect your feedback and your thoughts. And then you can share your thoughts and your feedback through an online survey tool that will really mirror the meeting toolkit and also kind of our meeting agenda and structure next week at the community meeting. Really, again, looking for your broad feedback and thoughts, things you're excited about, things you'd like to see changed in the neighborhood plan or any of the other documents. All of that you can access through our Engage Eugene page, which you probably visited to participate in today's virtual information session, but I'll also make sure to drop that link in the chat. And just a reminder that this initial period of collecting feedback will go through June 5th. That's when we'll close the survey, and Terry will talk about more ways to engage even after that.
Great, thank you, Leah. We're almost done. Just a couple more slides here. So as we were talking, the phase we're in now is really the first step in a multi-step process to get to plan approval and adoption. We're here in the spring gathering community feedback, and that's really to help the community organizations and the CAC with their recommendations. So that's the first step. Once we gather that feedback and provide it to the community groups, they will develop their recommendations, and there will be a phase of plan revision. So things that are that make sense to change at this point before we go to Planning Commission, that's what we want to do. We want to make the plan as good as possible and respond to as many needs as possible before it goes to the Planning Commissions. So that process starts in the fall. It will go to Planning Commission for both Eugene and Lane County for work sessions, a public hearing, and their recommendations to their elected bodies. And there are multiple ways that people can participate in that part of the process. We'll make sure to keep our website and newsletters updated, because you can provide email testimony, you can go to hearings, you can provide verbal testimony as well. Then in the winter of 2024 will be the last step in the adoption process, and both the City Council and Board of County Commissioners will also hold work sessions, another public hearing, and then ultimately take action to approve the plan. Implementation goes for a long time beyond this timeline. So how do we stay involved with where we're going? The key way that we want to mention today is through the neighborhood organizations or as an individual in the community. So both the River Road and Santa Clara community organizations have recently held meetings on this topic. They were within the last week. And neighborhood advocacy is the most effective way to get additional funding for priority projects that are in the plan. In addition, we'll be holding an annual coordination meeting with staff from multiple departments and leaders of the two neighborhood organizations to discuss priorities for the upcoming year. And that concludes the presentation. Thank you for listening. I'll stop sharing in just a moment, and we'll go into the Q&A.
And folks can feel free to raise their hands, and I can unmute you and you can ask your question. And it looks like Robin has their hand raised.
Okay, can you hear me?
You can hear you.
This all, I mean, I'm trying to grasp what you're presenting. I understand that you presented about the Santa Clara Community Park. And then the other thing that I saw was like how close an apartment building could be to another house and how tall it could be. Are there other things involved? And then I have another question after this.
That's a great question. It is a lot of material. I guess I would start the answer with that. There are land use code related things with how close a building can be and what the required landscaping is. That is a component of the land use topic area. And the Santa Clara Park is a way to implement the Parks and Natural Resources vision topic area. There are also a number of policies and ideas for projects under the categories of transportation, economic development, and community. So there is a lot, and we're happy to help you as you work your way through the materials, kind of focus in on what you're most interested in. When you get to the survey instrument itself, it will ask questions such as, is there anything missing? Is there anything you think should be changed? And how you feel about the information that's in there in general.
Okay. And I'm kind of like, I live in the River Road area, and I'm wondering if River Road Park and pool are included in your plan, and how does it work with the, you know, some people being in city limits and other being in the county? How does that all interact?
Great question. The plan is for everyone. So whether you're a city or county resident, the whole plan is a vision for the community as a whole. That being said, it is a long range document that will take a long time to fully implement. And as you say, there is an existing River Road Parks District facility, the Emerald Park and the pool and everything, that is not proposed to change in any way by the plan. So for the time being, that remains as it is.
Are they being included? I mean, have you talked to anybody there about, what's going on in the future and how they would like to be involved in this?
Yeah, I'll answer that and then see if John has anything to add, and then we can go to Samuel's question. Yes, they are one of the special districts that has been involved in the process, and coordination has happened with them. I don't know if there's been recent conversations, maybe John or Louisa, that you're aware of.
This is John Belcher. No, we have not gotten back to the special districts, but I think that's on our to-do list. And we'll make sure that they're aware. The question of annexation is not part of this discussion.
Okay, thanks.
Mary, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a lot in the plan, Robin. There's a lot. So it's good if you can get a chance to pick one up, like if you go to the meeting next week. But if not, Elena, can you have a link in the chat so she can link to it? And this way you can read through it yourself. It's something are really and you're not interested in, but you probably zero in on what you really are most interested in.
Sounds good. Yeah, Leah put a couple of links in the chat, but I can put one that directly goes straight to the neighborhood plan also.
And Robin, I would suggest take a look at the goals and take a look at the plan and the action items and see whether you think the goals are met by the plan and the action items. And if it's not, that's something we should hear from you.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks for being here.
All right, I'm gonna go to Samuel's question.
Hi there. I see people changing their faces, so I assume you can hear me. I was curious about when we were talking about the code changes. I didn't quite follow everything that we were talking about. And so I heard you talk about changes to the C2 zone that involve sort of changes to the height requirements and setback requirements. And I'm curious, what changes from what? So are we taking like it? I guess I'm like, what is the baseline that's being changed? And also, like, the other question is, are there pieces of land that are going to be C2 under this new plan that wouldn't have been before? And or is it more that there's spaces that are C2 now that are going to be different C2 after? Does that, I think that question. And then my second question, I'll just ask them both so that I can jump off and let you guys answer, is do any of those changes, or I guess, what are the changes to parking requirements? It was mentioned that there are changes, but like, what do those changes look like? And specifically, and I hope the answer to this is yes, will there be less giant parking lots and more usable spaces? And yeah, that's the end. Thanks.
Thank you for the questions. I'll take a stab at the C2 question and then let Leah answer the parking question. So you were following pretty closely what was proposed for the C2. Part of your question is, will there be additional properties that get a change in zoning? And no, that is not part of the current proposal. The proposal is to put a note in the land use code that applies a couple of new things to land that's already zoned C2 within the boundaries of River Road and Santa Clara. So it's sort of testing out some ideas that might make sense citywide, honestly, but that have been studied through this planning process for a number of years. And so one thing is the reduction in building height. So we have a land use code. It might be visible behind my face. It's a big binder of code, and what we're doing is adding a couple of special requirements for the River Road and Santa Clara areas that are zoned C2. And then there's one small change to the R1 zone to allow the sale of agricultural products. Let's see. Yeah, so the other things besides building height, the prohibition on certain uses, and the transition standards, those are all added to the code specifically for these two neighborhoods.
Yeah, and Terry, I'm sorry, you might have said this and I missed it, but the current C2 height limit across the city is 120 feet. So this would be dropping it to 60 feet in the neighborhoods. Proposed to. In terms of parking, I think that was your next question. I don't want to bring us too far down a rabbit hole, but I'll give a short summary and then I'll drop a couple links into the chat. The Climate Friendly and Equitable Communities program is a new set of state requirements that the city will be implementing over the next 6 years or so. The first thing that we have to do is reform how we do or do not require off-street parking for new development. So you may or may not know that the city typically has a certain number of parking spaces per bedroom or per dwelling unit that are required for new development or redevelopment. So the state is basically saying in order to kind of reduce greenhouse gas emissions from transportation, we want to relook at how we require off-street parking. So parking lots, parking ramps, things like that. So within the rules that are currently in place that just changed earlier this year are within a half a mile of a frequent transit line, which includes River Road up to Santa Clara Station. Within half-mile walking distance of that bus route, the city can no longer require a minimum number of parking spots for new development. So that doesn't mean that developers can't build parking. And from what we're seeing so far, it doesn't mean that they won't build parking. We're still seeing, for the most part, developers continue to build or overbuild on parking, especially for areas, outside of kind of the central core of the city. It just means that the city isn't going to require them to, and it's more based on market forces or their financing or the needs of the folks that they're building that housing for. So that's the first kind of step of relooking at parking requirements. There's a couple more decisions that remain to be made, kind of looking citywide outside of those transit corridors. So I'll drop a link to learn more about the Climate Friendly and Equitable Communities project, as well as a map of the parking changes that are now in place, including along the part of the River Road corridor.
If I may add, Leah, to bring that to the impact on River Road and Santa Clara climate friendly. If you look at a map, more than, in my estimation, more than half of River Road and Santa Clara will fall under that no minimum parking requirement zone. And there's a unique situation for those parts of the River Road and Santa Clara area that are not within city limits. There are no parking enforcement standards on the streets. So it's a bit of a challenge for us if people are not having sufficient parking within a development for the current desire for parking, that's going to go onto our streets, and there is no mechanism now to keep people from parking up against the corners, frankly, across people's driveways, et cetera, et cetera. So that's something to think about.
And I'll also jump in and want to make it clear that that is a related but separate process than adopting the River Road Santa Clara neighborhood plan. But in the action plan, which accompanies the neighborhood plan, there are a number of actions I just kind of like did through the document right now that kind of talk about, depaving oversized parking lots and using shared parking lots for commercial spaces and things like that. So that's definitely captured in the action plan as well. Are there any other questions or any either want to ask out loud or in the Q&A? You can drop them in.
I was just going to say, it's okay if you don't have any more questions. We ended early yesterday too.
Like
and the point
Robin.
here is, oh, we got one.
Looks like Robin raised their hand again.
Good.
Robin, you can go ahead.
Sorry. On the top 2 chat items, can you turn those into a link like you did the bottom 2?
Yes, we'll redrop them so they're direct
Okay.
links.
Okay.
Thank you.
thanks.
And then we also have a question about the Ruby Bridge project and what that time frame is looking like. I don't know that off the top of my head.
Yeah, it's a good question. I just know that there's only been partial funding received, so it's likely to take several more years to be fully funded, let alone designed. They need to find a place for the bridge to land and acquire a house or two, those sorts of things.
Yeah, I'm gonna drop in another link for everyone, but there is a link to the project page for the bicycle and pedestrian bridge that has a little bit more information, including a rough timeline, but similar to what Terry just said, it's somewhat open-ended until they do some more study.
Good questions. Looks like Louisa has her hand up. Go ahead.
I was super curious if anybody, the attendees, wouldn't mind sharing if this is the first time they've engaged with the project. We've been on our side. I'm a neighbor. I live in River Road, working in this for about 5 years, and so there's obviously a big spread between how much people know about the project, the history, the development, the many meetings and versions. And so I'm curious, the folks who are here, is this the first time you've heard about the project? Is this new, or have you been following it the whole time? Anybody share?
If anyone would like to share, please raise your hand so I can allow you to speak. All right, looks like we've got Wilhelmina.
Hello. So I recently found out about it when I went to the first Thursday meeting at the Lutheran Church here in Santa Clara. And so this is new, and then I joined this meeting, and so I'm excited to now know about it. I picked up some of the flyers at that meeting on that Thursday. It was late because I work early morning shifts, so I picked up as many flyers as I could and shared it with the neighbors that I have close to me. And I will be an advocate for getting them to your North Eugene meeting on the 25th. So I think knowledge is good, and I like knowing about it, and yay. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Coming.
And then looks like we have Marianne as well.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I have been receiving the stuff over the years and really appreciate all that's been done. And of course, meant to get more involved, but it's really cool to see it to this level and the stuff you are addressing. So it's very impressive, and thank you for really reaching out to make it accessible to as many people as possible. That's been appreciated immensely, and I'm getting my other River Road friends, like we have to do this. This is going to impact all of us, so let's pay attention, and so we'll be there next week for sure. Thank you.
That's awesome. Thanks, Marianne. And I'll just add, Samuel in the chat said, I heard about the project last summer at an event in a park near my home, and this is the first time I've taken the opportunity to engage. So thank you for being here, Samuel.
And then I think Robin's raised their hand again. You should be allowed to unmute yourself and speak.
Okay. I haven't really been involved in this. I've gone to some River Road community organization meetings, And I know a while back there was talk about putting a path or like a bike path and a walking area on Howard down to the school, but that hasn't started. Is that still going to be done?
I think that is on the list. We do have a map showing future Safe Routes to Schools projects and future transportation projects in general that we'll have at the meeting on Thursday. We'll also have several transportation staff there at the meeting. So I don't know the answer offhand, but we do have information about that on the website and at the meeting.
And I will drop a link in to the Safe Routes to School projects site. That includes a project on Howard Avenue. And it looks like they've already done some public engagement, but you can get some project updates and the project staff using the link, and I'll drop that in just in a minute. But yeah, that's a great example of the things that kind of coalesce within the neighborhood plan and actions.
Robin, the last I heard was that they were getting ready to get started and they discovered that construction costs, like everywhere else, have gone up significantly and they lack sufficient funding. So I think they're back looking for more funding.
That's the last I had heard as well. Mary.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate to everybody who's listening, you know, if I had just come to this presentation and that's all I knew, I'd be like that Sam, I think it was, said, oh, so you're changing building heights, you're doing parks. Well, there's lots of stuff in it. It covers everything from traffic problems to parks to greenway to what kind of businesses we have. And Terry just gave a few examples to show you what kind of things are in there. That's not all it is. So if you can really check out the link, you'll see pretty much everything that involves living your life in River Road and Santa Clara is addressed in one way or the other. So you should really, if you have the time, take a look to see what's really in it and what's important to you.
Any other comments or questions? Peter says that they have been in and out of being involved for the last 4 years or so.
Thanks for your commitment. 4 years is a long time.
Oh, it looks like Kathy's hand is raised as well. All right, you can go ahead, Kathy.
Hi, I'm relatively new, haven't been involved. But I'm wondering about the single family zoning, and I think there's some state things about wanting more multifamily zoning. Can you talk about that? Is that included in this plan?
Yeah, I can talk about that. The middle housing law, also called House Bill 2001, I think is what you're referring to. It was a separate project passed by the legislature in 2019, and the city of Eugene went through a process of deciding how to apply that law across the city, which concluded last year. So the code amendments were adopted in the summer of 2022, and they do apply to all land that's zoned R1 once it annexes to the city. So they were city code amendments. They do allow a variety of housing like duplexes, triplexes, row houses, and cottage clusters, and fourplexes. Depending on the size of the lot. And maybe, since Leah's dropping a lot of links into the chat, she could drop a link to the middle housing project page. There's a lot of information on that webpage as well, but it is one of the projects that definitely shifted the trajectory of the neighborhood plan. It changed what was possible.
I don't know. I'm not hearing you properly. I don't know. Are you saying metal housing? What do you?
Middle.
What is it? Middle housing. Oh,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
What about county properties?
Yeah, the county is not subject to the same rules as the city under those middle housing requirements. So the code amendments that the city adopted will only affect land once it's annexed by the property owner to the city.
However, the county has authorized the ability to build accessory dwelling units without annexing to the city.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was wondering. Okay.
Thank you, Leah, for the link. There's a link in the chat if you want to learn more about middle housing. We'll give it another minute or so. Going once, going twice. Thank you for coming, everyone. Even if you didn't get to say hello, we really appreciate you being here.
And we appreciate you telling other folks about the meeting next Thursday. So, all right.
Thanks
Enjoy
everyone for your time.
Yep. Enjoy the rest of your days.
Yeah, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.